Hello there and welcome to another BoBeats video. Today we're taking a quick look at this new update from Elektron. It contains a lot of new cool features for the Analog Rytm Four Mark 1 and Mark 2, and probably the biggest upgrade is the fact that you can now use the tracks on these devices as MIDI tracks. So you can basically sequence external gear from the internal tracks using the MIDI output, for example. And this was something that they for a long time said wasn't possible, so I'm really excited about that upgrade, but more on that later. So this is the Analog Rytm Mark 2, and as you can see here under, for example, filter and amp, you can see that they've changed the graphics a bit just to be a little bit more in line with their Digitakt and Digitone series, so that's pretty cool. Another small but significant update is that we can now hit sample and we get the same waveforms view as we're used to on the Digitakt, so that's really nice. So here, for example, we can graphically see start and end point. It's a small thing, but it's nice, especially if you enjoy the way it works on the Digitakt. Another big new feature is the ability to randomize parameters. So how does this work? Well, let's create a drum groove. And say we want to randomize stuff. Well, for example, let's take the kick drum. Let's go to a page. Source is the page for the kick drum. Let's hold source, press yes. So you can basically randomize whatever parameter page you want. So let's say you want a random LFO on this tom. Now, of course, with randomization, it doesn't mean that you get something instantly musical. However, with a few clicks, we got something that sounds pretty cool. And with a few tweaks, we got something like this. Now, another cool new feature is the fact that you can now link multiple performances together and control them using the quick performance knob here. So normally what you'd have is just a control of the one performance. And now you can hold down this button here and select multiple ones. So for example, selecting 4 of them like this. And if you're new to Elektron workflow, basically the Analog Rytm has performances that are gradual changes. So when I turn a knob, there's a gradual change. You can see them light up. And then we have scenes, which is more on and off states like this. Another nice addition in this update is that you can now select tracks by simply hitting the pad. Now somebody might rightfully think, why wasn't this a thing before? And yeah, I'm sure. This makes a lot of sense. Before, you actually have to push the track button and jump around. The old way of doing things is still available. You can turn this off so it doesn't change whenever you're hitting a pad. So that's nice. There's also a great new feature. If you press this button here, you can see hold Fn and Y, now the tempo will be different for this pattern. And this pattern over here, 120. Now this is a feature we had on the Digitakt, for example, already, so I'm really glad to see it being included for the Mark II units. Another thing that I think a lot of people have been waiting for is the ability to set different speeds, not just for the pattern itself, but also for the individual tracks. So now I can set track 9 to something different here. I know that a lot of people have been asking for this. I'm super happy that I included it. It's not something I personally use a lot, but I can definitely see it being useful. And yeah, I've seen so many comments about it, so that's great to have it finally. Now, most of these changes that I talked about are the same for the Analog 4 Mark 1 and 2, but of course, when we're talking sampling, it's just Analog Rytm Mark 2. So now you can not only select the normal sources, audio left and right, the individual tracks, but you can now also select USB, so you could basically sample from your computer using USB into the Analog Rytm Mark II, which is nice. This is a feature that, for example, the MC707 has, so it's nice to see it on the Rytm Mark II as well. Now next up, we're gonna hook up the Analog Rytm to my little MC101. The MC101 is probably not the best choice when it comes to demoing this. It's just that I had it laying around. So I'm connecting a MIDI cable, MIDI out, into the MIDI in. So to set this up to work with the MC101, might work differently with the device that you're using. I'm going here to the settings menu, MIDI config, port config, and then I choose output channel. You have to also make sure that out port functionality is set to MIDI and that your output to MIDI or MIDI and USB, and output channel, auto channel doesn't work. No sound. But if I change it to track channel, then suddenly it works. Because if I press function and track, trig setup, track 1, send MIDI. So track 1. Oh, and if you're wondering about the sweeping noise, that's from the You Know chorus that I have on one of the sounds. Now, from what I gather, you can play the MC101 here polyphonically from this little pad grid here, but I'm not so sure that I could be programming it that way, because on the Analog Rytm you can't do more than one note on one step. So that's something that I think is different with the Analog 4, because on the Analog 4, of course, you could be sending a chord, for example, from one of the internal tracks. But yeah, I don't think it's possible on the Analog Rytm Mark II, but if you happen to have found a way around it, let me know in the comment section. Now, while I was testing this, I noticed something that might confuse some of you. So here I have track 1. It's set up, as I showed you, under function, track, trig setup to send MIDI notes. But for track 1, which is my kit, it's very important that you make sure that you actually have a note value here under, if you hold down a step. So 24 here for the kick. So let's say I want to do a hi-hat. The trigs doesn't sound because we don't have a note here. But if we take note value 18, copy it over, and we got something like this. So definitely usable, especially for triggering drum sounds or samples. But if you want to do, say, pads or chords, I actually don't think it's possible from this sequencer. But if you have the Analog 4 Mark 1 or Mark 2, you can of course do chords and stuff like that. So yeah, a really nice addition. And to end today's video, I thought I'd just play you something that I made while at a spa of all places. I brought the MC101 with me. This was made using only internal sounds. So thank you so much for watching this little update video here on the Analog Rytm and Analog 4. It works for both Mark 1 and Mark 2, but of course there are certain things that only work for the Mark 2s that are sampling related, for example. So go and check it out. Have a great day.